Welcome to REGO Park, New York City. It's the 1970s, and comic book writer Art Spiegelman is visiting his father, Vladek. He wants to record Vladek's extraordinary story of survival through World War II. But it's not smooth sailing. Vladek is a shrewd survivor, but he's not easy to get along with. Just ask his second wife, Marla. But without further ado, let's jump right into the world of young Vladek Spiegelman. Believe it or not, Vladek was a bit of a ladies' man back in the day. For 3 years, he had a girlfriend named Lucia Greenberg, but he wasn't very into her. When 30-year-old Vladek met Anja Zilberberg, he knew he'd met the love of his life. But Vladek and Anja couldn't be more different. He could barely pay his bills with what he earned selling textiles and had dropped out of school at age 14. On the other hand, 24-year-old Anja was from a wealthy background and had finished high school with flying colours. Nevertheless, they hit it off and soon got engaged. Poor Lucia Greenberg. She didn't take it well. Vladek also decided to move from Chenstokhova to Sosnovitz, where Anja's family lived. The move would also bring him closer to his own family. So, on February 14, 1937, Anja and Vladek tied the knot. How cute! A Valentine's Day wedding. Soon after they were married, Vladek and Anja had their first major drama. Anja was still in touch with an old boyfriend of hers, a communist, and had been helping his cause by translating messages from Polish into German. Worryingly, the Polish government weren't too keen on communists. Soon enough, the police raided Vladek and Anja's home. Then all their neighbours too. The problem was that Anja had hidden documents with a neighbour, Miss Stefanska, a seamstress. When the police found the documents, they sent Miss Stefanska to prison for 3 months. Anja's father, Mr. Zilberberg, made sure that Miss Stefanska was generously compensated for her troubles. Anja's father cared deeply for his family, and now Vladek was part of that. To help Vladek, Mr. Zilberberg gave him the money to start a factory in Bielska. What a dream come true! And the good times just kept on coming. Vladek and Anja were now parents. In October 1937, their first son, Richu, was born. But the good times didn't last forever. Soon after giving birth to Richu, Anja was struck down by postnatal depression, and it was serious. So Anja's parents arranged for her and Vladek to stay at a luxury sanitarium, or long-stay hospital, in Czechoslovakia. But on their train trip, they saw something shocking, a Nazi flag. Trouble was brewing, but for 3 months they were able to forget about it. Vladek and Anja lived it up at the sanitarium until Anja recovered. Anja was now back to her old self, but Poland had changed. The Nazis' attacks on Jews were on the rise, so much so that Vladek's new factory was looted. But he had even more frightening things to worry about, because on August 24, 1939, he was drafted to fight in the Polish army against Germany. And there wasn't much time to prepare, because on September 1st, 1939, Germany invaded Poland. World War II had begun. With Anja and Richu safely in Sosnovitz, Vladek prepared for combat. Thankfully, this wasn't totally new to him. When he was 22, Vladek joined the Polish army as a conscript and received basic training. But this didn't mean that he or any of his comrades were any good at real fighting. After only 2 hours, the Germans defeated the Polish army and took Vladek as a prisoner of war. The Germans sent all the captured Polish soldiers to a hellish, overflowing camp just outside of Nuremberg in Germany. What was worse, the Germans subjected the Jewish prisoners to extra punishment. They were separated from the Polish prisoners and worked to the bone. After a few weeks, Vladek was transferred to a bigger camp. The work was still brutal, but at least they got real beds in wooden houses. It was a world away from the flimsy tents in the first camp. One night, after a hard day's work, Vladek slept so deeply that his dead grandfather came to him in a dream. He told Vladek that he would be free on the day of Pascha's Truma. Pascha's Truma was a day on which Jews read a certain section of the Torah, the Jewish holy text. But that was 3 months away, a lifetime in the camps. However, Vladek's vision was spot on. On the day of Pascha's Truma, Vladek and his comrades were marched out of the camp and loaded onto trains to Poland. Woohoo! Freedom! But wait, why was the train steaming past Sosnowitz and onto Lublin? It was a trap. Only 2 days prior, the Nazis shot 600 soldiers, just like Vladek, in the woods there. Vladek had to hide. But where? Luckily, he had a friend in Lublin named Orbach. From his old army training days, Orbach hid Vladek and kept him safe for a few days. But Vladek was desperate to see his family again. He had to find a way to get to Sosnowitz. And so, with the help of a sympathetic Polish train guard, Vladek made it to Sosnowitz. But when Vladek arrived, he received a nasty shock. The Nazis had shaved off his father's beard to publicly humiliate him. And his mother was losing her battle with cancer. She didn't have long to live. And sadly, their reunion was short-lived. Vladek had to hurry if he was to see Anja and Richu before the strict 7 p.m. curfew. Fortunately, they were only nearby an Anja's family home, and soon enough they were all one happy family. Clearly, the war was taking its toll on the Zilberbergs. They were running out of money and food. Vladek knew he had to start earning money, so he went back to trading textiles. But this wasn't risk-free. He had to be careful. The Nazis banned trading textiles without coupons, which was exactly what Vladek planned to do. Little did he know, the Nazis were already after his associates for this. When they were caught, their punishment was shocking. The Nazis hanged them and left their bodies dangling on full display for a week. This really shook Vladek up. For days he didn't go outside. He just stayed in the tiny space the Nazis had moved the 12 of them into. It was now 1942, and the Gemeinde, the local Jewish community organisation, made a worrying announcement. All Jews had to register at the local stadium to have their documents checked. When the time came, Dienst Stadium was packed with 30,000 Jews. The Nazis divided them into 2 groups. On the left were old people, families with many children, and people without work cards. On the right were those who could work and their families. Only those on the right got their papers stamped and were allowed to return to Sosnowitz. Vladek, Anja, Richu and Anja's family were part of the lucky few sent to the right. Sadly, those on the left, including Vladek's father and sister, faced a grim fate. They were headed to Auschwitz, never to return. Before we find out what happens next, Art wants to show us something. Vladek has recently read a comic strip that Art published a long time ago. It's about Art's mother, Anja, and how she killed herself in 1968 when Art was around 20 years old. Drawing the story of his mother's death, the funeral, and Vladek's wild grief helped Art process the tragedy. But for Vladek, it has brought up painful memories of Anja, although he still thinks about her all the time anyway, and frankly, poor Marla has almost had enough. But let's return to Vladek's story. Things settled down for a while after the Dienst Stadium incident, but in 1943, the Nazis kicked out all the Jews left in Sosnowitz. They forced them to move to Schroedele, a nearby town. The Spiegelmans and Silberbergs now had even less space than before. Then again, many Jews were now living on the streets. Suddenly, it seemed some good luck had come their way. Anja's family were connected to a man named Persis, who was the head of the Jewish council in Zawiecie. He wanted to help some of Anja's family, including little Richu, move to Zawiecie and hopefully avoid Auschwitz. So Vladek and Anja made the difficult decision to send Richu away. This would be their last goodbye. In Zawiecie, the Gestapo, or Nazi police, went berserk and Persis was shot dead. Anja's sister, Tosha, was there and had the children in her care, including little Richu. She refused to die at the hands of the Nazis. So, using the poison she always kept on her, she killed the children, then herself. News of Richu's death didn't reach Vladek and Anja straight away. They were too busy finding places to hide. It really was a deadly game of cat and mouse. But eventually, they were betrayed by a stranger whom they tried to help. He ratted them out to the Nazis. The Gestapo then took the Spiegelmans and Silberbergs to a detention centre with 200 other Jews. Every week, a van would come and take a group away to Auschwitz, and the next van was due in 6 days. They had to escape before then. By another stroke of luck, Vladek sees his cousin, Yakov, on the other side of the fence. Perhaps he could help them, for a price. Yakov agreed, and another cousin named Haskell came to help. For his service, Vladek had to hand over Mr. Silberberg's jewels, but Haskell was a crook. He only smuggled out Vladek, Anja, and their teenage nephew, Lolek, leaving Mr. and Mrs. Silberberg destined for Auschwitz. After only a few days, Schroedele became a ghost town. Soon enough, Haskell got word that the Nazis were going to clear out Schroedele. He started to prepare for his own escape. But what about everyone else? Luckily, Haskell's brother, Milok, was a nice guy and shared his secret bunker with Vladek and Anja. But their nephew Lolek refused to hide again. He thought the Nazis would spare him as he was a skilled worker. Sadly, he was wrong. He was sent to Auschwitz with the rest of the town's Jews. This was a terrible blow for Anja. Almost her entire family was now gone. It was also around this time that they found out about Richu's death. Vladek had a hard time convincing Anja to keep going so they could survive together. A few days passed, and Vladek noticed there wasn't a soul in sight. Even the Nazis had left Schroedele. So Vladek and Anja headed back to Sosnowitz. While looking for a good place for them to hide, Vladek realised he was being followed. But the man was Jewish. He was also hiding with his wife in Sosnowitz and told Vladek where to buy food on the black market. What helpful advice! Just like the man had said, there was a woman secretly selling food. Delicious food. They also found a decent place to stay, thanks to a Polish lady named Mrs. Motonowa. But after a while, Vladek decided that they should flee to Hungary. Anja was terrified by the idea, but Vladek went ahead and arranged it all with some Polish smugglers, and he paid them well too. But not long into their journey, the Gestapo boarded the train and intercepted them. Those Polish smugglers were playing both sides, taking money from escaping Jews, then selling them out to the Nazis. If only Vladek had listened to Anja. Now they were headed to the very place they'd been desperately trying to avoid, Auschwitz. They couldn't even be together anymore. They'd have to survive alone. How will they get through this? Stay tuned for Volume 2 to find out. We hope you enjoyed this Schooling Online production. For more easy lessons, check out our other videos.